Today is May 9th, 2022. Um, I have now looked at what has been going on with Putin today because this is the day that he wanted to show that he has had victory over Ukraine and essentially where he wanted to basically just pigeon checkers victory over democracy in his what he is calling a proxy war between NATO and Russia. As General Petraeus made notice, China's being on the sidelines as they have to wait for Xi to become not emperor, but so it would go against the whole communist thing. Guy, head of the Communist Party for life, i.e., leader for life. Russia is it is what we need weapons, especially the howitzers, out on the open fields, out on the open plains, and to not and to keep purely from a geopolitical perspective the LNG fields that Russia's really after. That way, he could choke off Europe and then make Europe do his bidding via oil, via the gas fields. If Ukraine has the gas fields, and then they don't have the stranglehold on Western Europe. As we were speaking about another thing, it's been about a week. I got hit by last week. I was kind of supposed to show that I could do the day trading, and I was ran into a few problems. But it was not as bad as I thought it was. It was bad enough though. But what was really happening, I was getting hit by in a psychic attack by three different directions. Um, uh, One was two front attack by one by Kathleen Kennedy's little clique. Um, which is the whole I gotta be a monk, and I'm like, I'm no monk. Get the hell out of here. If being enlightened or trying to seek what is the true meaning of not that I have tried it, not that I'm enlightened anyways, but to try to find the true meaning of what is our higher self and how to get there, and not because I believe specifically each individual, and every time I run into these like systems, there's always like a cultish thing into it. And I understand that as a technology, you should be a true believer, but the idea of certain things. But anyways, it was I looked at it and it hit me, and I was like, God, I was like, you're like you lied to me, blah blah blah. But as I looked at it, I'm always remembering it's the middle way, especially the whole cardinal part. Like I didn't put all this together to make money, so I can live as a monk. Nah, I'm good with that. I'm gonna be. You would too. You were like, "Hey, dude, I've been busting my butt working on this thing for years," and all of a sudden, they're like, "Dude, that's really not belong." No, no, no. I couldn't handle that. So I had to back away for a second to redouble check on who I am, what I really believe in, and it is always because that would also not be. And the reason that they're trying to push it is that way that they can gain. It's always about gaining control over me, and so that's always the sidestep to my thing. Try to stay out of it. And to that end, from a and another thing, it was what really got me interesting, especially with Black African American women, is let's go back through here. We go one history where got a lot of news going on. KKK. Oops. History. Now, she put this one out. This was not this KK issues citizens of Atlanta. Now this came out on the exact same day where we know the Azovstal steel, the defenders in Azovstal steel plant were going as their Alamo. And but the thing is, I read over it. I said, okay, I saw it, and I'm like, ah, shoot, because what she did is she got the quote preacher man dude. What I mean by that is this guy. See, he represents the archetype, even though he's a um, news guy. He's been around for a while. He's the timing was he fits the what is it the archetype of the in his rhythm of speech of the black preacher. So what it did, what that timing of that, which it did, it kind of it's like, oh come on, man, you couldn't, you had to bring that up. And I was like, no, if I did not say something, if I did not bring that up at the time, then they would increase their attacks. What it does show us is because is the structure of how the women in general, but black African American women in particular, attack their culture in their neighborhood. Because the exact same time this attack came, which was a subtle attack, it was being an attack by Kennedy and her agents, which kind of kicked me off for a week, which is the exact same attack, but it was designed to be made not to look like an attack while it was still an attack. And then at the same time, it was too much energy trying to get me to go, and then which had a double effect. I didn't trust him, and then I have to do something else for Her Majesty. What makes us what made this an attack was the meme set itself informed me, gave me a warning, and I was like, well, isn't that cute? In and around the same time. So the structure of the way black African American women attack is they get um, they devalue the man. So if the most dangerous thing as far as archetypes that they view are educated, generationally educated, or even non-generational educated, but a white collar black African American, one who goes to work using suits and ties. And the attacks start first. They attack the individual, devalue. You ain't this, you not this, you not that. Then, as we see, that they move to using the network of women, and they attacking. You can see that with Miss Jada Pinkett Smith's videos, how she's attacking Will. And then if he acts out, then it's like I don't know who he is. Well, he don't there's no better. After and then if he hits her, as such as probabilistic, my hypothesis is that Will married his mother, and that if he thinking he was protecting his mother, his dad was actually being abusive, but she was also being just as toxic and abusive. Pushed his psychology till he snapped, and he unfortunately hit her, even though he should not have done so. Neither should she have done the behaviors, psychological behaviors. And so the and then the final thing is to get the preacher man to put him in his place. So you have your three-stage attack. And the last one is always done with European Americans doubling up on the attack. So that's how women work their way through structural society to attack the the high value male. Now, mind you, the same structure of attack is done with men who are also high cluster Bs, but the in general tactic of women is definitely devalue, then bring in the flying monkeys of women, then try to find a higher value target, higher value male, i.e., in the Black African American community, which would be the preacher man, to put to control, and then Caucasians men will then use that as a vector of attack as well. Knowing this gives you an understanding of where the attacks are coming from, and that they are real. So, as I said, the good doctor was all jealous and pissed off because I called her a poor person. Fortunately, I had called her a poor person, because if I had not had called her a poor person and she pulled this attack, it would have looked different. And then there are those who wondered, well, why did I place that? And I say, well, because I had to, because if I didn't, then like African Americans would start attacking. And even though they did, there was still an attack stating, well, black African Americans are upset with Biden or whatever. Here's the situation. Okay. Today, the DA, the grand jury in in New York, he's gonna the DA is gonna say the DA, or I think it's the DA who took over Cy Vance. So he said, oh, that the personally, I think he's been bought off either by the family or by Trump directly, or he has something all over him. But his argument is that he would not be able to bring charges against a former president, because the standards would be high. All right, i.e., we know presidents break the law. Yes, they break the letter of the law possibly, but they must never break what's called the spirit of the law. The law has two parts. That's why it's on a triangle: letter and spirit. The spirit is the intent, the idea of who we are. Should I, I might not, this group might not like me to do this, but I could still try to, maybe not use it as much or not hire as many people, but I'm still technically adhering to the law. So in spirit, I'm still trying to adhere to the law, but I'm not really doing much to it with it. And you break the spirit, and it might even kind of like, you could kind of closely, vagary in the gray area, say that the law might have been breaking, but I was in spirit trying to kind of do that. That's the spirit and the letter working together. When a president is expected, even if they kind of push the envelope on the law here or there or everywhere, they're supposed to still within the same spirit that the law was put down. And that is where the debates on the law are so important. So by not acting, and by Mitch McConnell taking away conversations over law, he's taken away conversations over spirit of the law. And by taking away the conversation of the spirit of the law, he's taken away the precedent as to what is the spirit of the law supposed to be done, and where should the president or executors of any of those laws should be acting within. What are the two left and right bounds of that? What they have done in the debates is say, oh, we're totally against it. So what that does is say, well, the spirit of the law is for and against. And so the president, what they're trying to do is then they can say, well, the executive can say whatever they want, therefore making the executive the law, which is counter to the Constitution. That's Mitch McConnell's what Mitch McConnell's been doing for decades by saying I'm not going to have debate on laws. I'm not going to define the spirit of the law. Then on the back end with the Koch brothers and stuff, they will say they think the spirit of the law is, and that's that whole heritage quote heritage foundation, which is a bunch of BS. Heritage means hate foundation, and then they are the ones who say what the spirit is. We're seeing this as we're coming into Roe versus Wade. Technically, Amy Coney Barrett and Alito never did lie. They told you it is the precedent of the land, i.e., they're going to destroy the precedent of Roe v. Wade, Casey, and stare decisis, which is the precedent of the precedent is because the precedent upholds the law. The laws are built upon older laws, which means we. And he just said willy nilly, well, that law doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have any precedent, and precedent doesn't matter. And since they're originalist, as they love to call themselves, they're basically saying the Constitution is a closed document, that it has no open interpretation. It's kind of like their view of the Bible. The Bible is either allegorical, it has an open view of interpretation, and the farther closer you are to God, the greater you are to understanding that interpretation, and then using that interpretation to grow society forward. Instead, they're saying it is what we said directly within the singular plane of humanity. Even if they're saying it is above, they're not. They're saying, well, if it is above, then they are the below, and that they are pious. But and God could be that angry, vengeful God, because one thing I noticed, because when I first went through, one of the things that happens when you go through the conjunction of the opposites, you freak out, dude. You know, it's like, oh my God, dude, people are really that much of jerks, and you're just blown away, especially if you don't think, wouldn't think to think that way. And so you're sitting there just like angry, and after a while, it's like, and then another thing is with what I call hype marketing, which is basically sales marketing. Sales, it's not marketing. Marketing is the brand, the bigger picture, the stratagem of business of getting reaching your customers and your customers interacting. But with sales tactics, which is built up a lot of by cluster bees because they're love to be in sales and marketing because they can get feedback immediately. More so sales. They're not big fans of they're not big fans of marketing, but definitely sales because that way they can get an immediate feedback. They can get that hit of a they get their hit of dopamine, I guess, from I got the sale or they get it. Screw you. This just that pseudo combativeness of theirs. But one of the things I've noticed when I was learning sales was that I call it hype. And they would get this hype, and you would see that also a lot of breadcrumbing. You see that there's a lot of systems that are narcissistic and psychopathic that are in marketing from breadcrumbing and the whole nine. But it's how the overall structure, good and evil, are the same thing. It's the use that makes them so. Um, I wouldn't say it's the same thing, but there is definitely a knife edge. If you know positive, you implicitly you know the negative. You know the outer, the inner, the outer, the upper, the lower, and uh, oh yeah. So, anyways, we're back all the way through all of that. The reason is because the family is so busy trying to destroy Earth and bring back Jesus, but the idea of Jesus, I don't think they're doing such a great job. But because it's a lot of their two-facedness that's created a lot of these problems. I don't think they believe that I could be just as horrible, and I believe, yeah, yes, you have to balance sometimes being horrible, but what it is they're still externalizing. They cannot get past their bigotry, their externalization of self. Because if they can externalize it, then they don't have, then that demon that doesn't have, then they don't have to deal with themselves. They can blame that on everybody else. So what we have right now with all of that is the abortion is about to be illegal through a lot of these states, and then these states who are not as theocratic as they would make it out to be. They think they want that. I have noticed, but it's more so I'm in this group. This is what my in group says, and less about free thinking. Because here's the thing: even though I saw one headline that says just because Roe versus Wade was overturned doesn't mean that they're going to go back and do Wade other just other precedents. BS. I believe that the family, because right now you have 20 something states who've signed up for the Constitutional Convention. This is the Koch brothers. So they want to destroy the Constitution and put in whatever the heck they want, which would be a corporate constitution. They're just vile. The Koch brothers have just done the most, almost as bad as what Rupert Murdoch has done to England and the Commonwealth countries by keeping such anger and obviously they know these things because look at Elon Musk buying Twitter, and then Staten had the nerve to say, "Oh, Twitter's the town square." Well, the Hyde Park, the original quote town square, is in the Commons. It's not owned by a person. So his argument is kind of stupid, and he knows it. It's basically just doing the same thing that Jared Kushner did. I don't like what you had to say about me, therefore I got to get rid of you. Which is being just as bad as a supposedly cancel culture on the left, when it's realistically, once again, it is far right goes saying you can't do what I do to you. You can't touch me, but I can hit you. That's just the statement of a bully. And speaking of which, Trump believes he's getting off. His daughter thinks she's getting off. They all think they're getting away with almost overturning this country, and they're going to try to say, well, if you let me in, you let me on the ballot box, or you don't do this, then I'll say it's rigged, and then I'll just tear the country apart and start a civil war. That's Trump's and Kushner and Ivanka. That's their goal. That's what they're gonna do. She wants to be empress, and he had the nerve. Trump had the nerve to tell the Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, that to tell that Lady Markle shouldn't maintain her title. So it's basically what's going on. I also he must be thinking he is in good position because that means he thinks he can attack me, and he's a coward because he never attacks unless he can attack from afar. And I think which is fine, you know. And he's doing the thing that the coward. He's institutionalized, which is something that was Mary Trump made a very good point. He thinks he is the law. He does not see the president as an office, but as he is the president. And and he's doing the Hitler lie thing. If you lie long enough, loud enough, often enough, people will finally give in to the onslaught of just the lie. But the lie will always turn around on itself and destroy itself. It's just how many lives is it going to cost for the vanity of two people, Trump and his daughter. Right now, we are very close to turning into a theocratic autocracy. Here's the thing: by being able to get rid of stare decisis, and they can then go after, and then saying they're originalist. Well, as an originalist, they can then say, well, corporations weren't around in 1776. We can argue that. Corporations weren't around in 1776 in the format they are today. They were put together for a quick use and then public good and then dismantled and then continued on. So with that argument, with the stare decisis argument saying that these we go back, then okay, then corporations can no longer be in existence. Human chattel is now back in force. Oh, and guns, your gun rights can be now taken away because it wasn't until the 1970s that the whole idea that anyone can own a machine weapon, a weapon of war, can go in and gun rights in the way that we have them today existed. Because before it wasn't a well regulated militia. You can have a hunting rifle, but it was considered you were part of a well-regulated militia, which was basically part slave patrol, part militia for the state, well-regulated, and it's been known and argued that it wasn't until the 70s, through a lot of lobbying by the NRA, that changed. So if we're going to take this, the Alito stare decisis, we need to start taking away their guns and start taking away the corporations. Because that's what's under attack. And there is what now we also have Amazon Labor Union. I'd like to shout out to Mr. Smalls. Thank you much. Because one of the things that the other thing besides the way the attack, the way this meme and the feminine black African American feminine attack is they do not want, as I said before, they they want the archetypes of the black African American male to be either crackpot, broke person, poor person, big difference between broke and poor, strung out on drugs or whatever, or they're just a blue collar, barely blue collar worker, which is nothing wrong with that. But they most definitely cannot stand a white collar worker. Why? Because the white collar person, the entrepreneur, the white collar thinker, those are the leaders of industry. Those are the leaders of their communities. If they could destroy the white collar worker as far as being the top of aspiration within the black African American community, then they can continue to pull down and break the black African American community, as you've seen once again with this attack. So I'm actually quite grateful because it's finally it's like, okay, gave me to be able to go see this is how they attack. This is how they do it. Remember, that was this attack here, where first slave, second slave, which is the gay persons, gay men, basically highly narcissistic people in this area, but gay men, females, the thugs as they were called, we to the black African American women. All these are the broken ones, but they've been actually funneled into quote into the prison industrial complex. So in there, high probability because it's more animalistic. You have that feminine masculine breakdown, hermaphrodite breakdown. Then you have the females all attacking the men. So where this person here would be a educated, supposedly, or at least think they're educated male, there's no such thing here for the black African American male and female because she is uh, bringing the highest person, the persons who are their everybody's. Basically, she's saying their enforcer is, or their jailers are their top dogs, weakening the Black American family. So now we've seen that in action. Here's a situation. Trying to get my things together. It's hard enough, put up a thing. He made a good point. As far as being a vet, it's easier to go running into bullets. It's easier to go do stuff that seems ridiculously difficult than to go do just, hey, how you doing? How's your day? After going through that, it's one of the most difficult. It didn't. It's hard. It's really hard. But the good news is I structure, because the other thing is with the way I was learning what I'm doing is it has to be scalable. And now my systems are scalable, and Wall Street knows it. Oh, it's back to, oh yeah, back to where I was getting to with Mr. Smalls is, you know, he realizes, or at least I hope he's realizing, that without the quote white collar working together, because a lot of times it is because of jealousies, which is the main thing they use. They mainly use jealousy on these folks. Yo, Smalls wants to go nationwide. Excellent. Yeah, because of that, they don't build out the structures necessary, both the emotional and the logical structures, to work together. Mr. Smalls is going to be going to have to go through a heck of a transformation. He's still always going to be who he is, but I'm not saying he's going to change. But if he's going to put this organization together, it's going to be a lot of hard work, and I think he's up for the challenge because he will change labor for the better in America. Now we also have the Starbucks. This is but between the combination of both of these. All of those Starbucks stores. You should break it down into regions, state. Kind of mirrors the way the Starbucks has their their systems broken down in. And the more stores you can get, the better it is, the stronger the union is, and it makes it more. Because the one thing where Starbucks Unlike McDonald's, where you can probably, if they could get away with automating every single thing of it, Starbucks, I mean, McDonald's probably would. Starbucks, because even if it's automated, a lot of that is about the interaction. A lot of their brand is the needed interaction between human beings. So by having since their brand is built upon that human interaction and human connection, they need their employees to maintain the strength of their brand, which then sells other products into other outlets. So the base, so you have, yes, a positive, something that's burnt or whatever, a good product, but then the secondary product on that is the interaction of, and everyone makes fun of it. I get a blippity blank venti sipty whatever, blah, 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 and you know how to say it's that rhythm and it can only be contained with people. So getting as many stores and then being able to eventually buy your way onto the board. And this is the same thing. GM, when they had with the UAW, yeah, um, had GM went over over the rails, they should have maintained ownership. They should have never sold their shares. If anything, keep adding more shares because that would have. It's because workers have to think long term. They have to think in 10 years. So if we're by shareholder value, well, the values as the shareholders now go, yeah, you got to balance next quarter with 10 years from now. How is this business? How's this business decision still going to help us 10 years from now? And since that's maximizing shareholder value, it it makes us more productive and more profitable over the long term. And now with the Gerasimov doctrine of everything is total war, that you're not just fighting the armies of a country, you're fighting not its people, you're fighting the ideas of itself. And that is what makes this doctrine so dangerous, is that if we do not live up to our ideals, then we can be defeated if we do not live up to our ideals. Right now, what Putin has done with the far right and the far theocratic right is said, okay, they're your ideals. They're a bunch of Nazis. They will tell you they will not say it out loud anymore. They're the Nazis. So if he's going after Nazis in Ukraine, then and then he's building Nazis in the U.S., then what is he going to say? He's really going denazifying any America? Create as much chaos and put whoever you want in. So, and that's the thing when you looked at Donald Trump with the Saudis. MBS, Jared got MBS in, so he got his. And when we now look at MBS, MBS was the only one, quote, not tainted by the West. And, right, and it's funny, he's like, MBS said, oh, I'll release some of these religious things off of you, but I'm going to increase the amount of surveillance I have on the populace via their phones. So he gave away one, but he actually was increasing the other. So him putting money to Jared to get go into technology was him not just paying him off, but also learning how he can further spy on his people and put a further grip on their thinking and control. And he thinks Trump is a buffoon, nonetheless. So once again, we need to find out What were the things that Trump was going to do in the second? So we know that we assume, so the question is, did Trump break the spirit of the law? Did the Trump organization break the spirit of law in New York? And if he did, and then your district attorney did not prosecute, or whoever it is, whichever guy who took over Cy Vance, then he's corrupted. He's been bought out by either the family or the Trump organization itself, with high probability. Then now we have the January 6th Commission, and the reason I have this one up is okay. We know about abortion rates, spirit in a letter, and they say in a letter, and the precedent is the spirit. And what he said, and what Alito was saying is the spirit of the law of what Roe v. Wade was written on, which is stare decisis, is not sacrosanct. It is not. It is not. From his perspective, it is not true. That and any other precedent going all the way back as originalist, therefore, is he took out Roe v. Wade by saying the spirit of the law is not correct. And his argument is BS, personally. So the question is, and also when we look at, you have the White House, you have Congress, right, and then you have the Vice President. Right now, Congress is referring criminal contempts to the executive branch to prosecute on the behalf of Congress. This has to go through all of these things, and you have these people like Bannon who's saying executive privilege. It has now been shown by the courts that these persons who are calling executive privilege do not have executive privilege. The whole idea of what Trump was doing with all these, in his mind at least, putting in all these judges is when it comes time for Congress, we the people, to hold the executive to hold, the judges will say that we the people can't hold the executive to an accounting. Now here's the situation. We know right now we're just trying to work with the executive branch. Right now the executive branch has more authority than Congress. Because the Congress has not. It's also the thing about what Alito did was saying precedent is no longer, unless it was at the. This kind of actually works out kind of cool, in a way. Precedent is no longer in effect unless it was at the original founding. Well, fine. That strengthens Congress's hand actually, because if it's precedent only at the founding, well then precedent only at the founding would state Congress has every right to bring the president in for questioning, and if he and or his agents do not show up, Congress, by the Constitution and the spirit of its drafting, shall and can take the individuals of the executive branch and place them, if they are in contempt of Congress, in jail until they are no longer do so. Here's the thing right now to exemplify this. The January 6th committee has issued subpoenas. There are persons who are saying we do not have to listen to those subpoenas. Kushner and Ivanka came in voluntarily. Okay, what they were doing was sidestepping. Bring them in live under subpoena and make them speak under oath. What they were doing was trying to get a feel of what Congress knew by what questions you asked them. Basically, a recon mission. Same thing with Donald Trump Jr. There's just basically a recon mission. Any of the Trumps, Mark Meadows, if they're one way, 1 degree, they're thinking it's just a recon mission. But Congress has to also call any senators. The January 6th Commission has to call senators, has to call, because of the 14th Amendment, has to call senators, has to call members of the House, and be willing to put them in jail and hold them to inherent contempt. Now, from African American perspective, if and women's perspective and men's perspectives, if you're a small business owner, if you're a gun rights owner, uh, you need to vote Democrat. But right now, the Democrats are not messaging to understand that, look, they're going to steal your entire. They have been working at this for decades to steal and turn America from a secular country into a theocratic country where corporations are ruled by the church, where your gun rights can be taken away, slavery can be reinstated. And you might say, well, this is all over the. No, listen to what they're saying. Listen to what they are saying. Watch what they are doing. This is what they are trying to do. From Alito to McConnell, all those super far rights. Definitely listen to what libertarian, which is bullshit, which is just me being a toddler and you can't tell me what to do. It would get rid of union rights. Yeah. Roe versus Wade. If you do not get Black Lives Matter. I sat there and watched this thing video, and she's smile. And look, lady, I don't care. You need to set it up. Black Lives Matter, where it's outreach. For instance, there was one Black Lives Matter. They wanted to set up a community center. Well, then they should be able to have gotten. You should have had to get into your Rolodex. Should go. Okay, here's the YMCA. YWCA. How do we create one of these? Let's get together. It's run by Black Lives Matter. If we can get together, create a YMCA. Blah blah blah. Whining is not going to get you anywhere. You should be having outreach on, as since you have it should be broken into state and local, and then any giving is done on the local. 70% goes to local, 30% goes to so actually it goes 60% goes to the local. Then of that 40%, Once again, then it's again in 60/40, so 40%, so it goes to the national. And so that way you could build the capital resources necessary over time. And they should be sitting there going out. There should be gob tons of community outreach. And I know it explains to me what happened last summer when I called. There was nobody there to call to. So the unions, Black Lives Matter, if you want police reform, this has to be done. They are trying to completely destroy America by removing the spirit of the law, by not prosecuting Trump in New York on violations of the spirit of the law, by not prosecuting him for both spirit and letter of the law, in by Congress letting him get away. We want young people. You want student loan forgiveness because it was done ridiculously. It was done purely as BS. So Wall Street can make money, which ends up making us less money because you don't have the cash to put into buying a house. You don't have the cash to to get the economy cooking with all that education. There's not enough money for for an entrepreneur because it's all tied up because it was designed to once again enslave through debt enslavement. Not just not just black African Americans, but but Caucasian Americans as well. Keep them ground down instead of letting them create more capital. That's what they're. That's how they think. That's how psychopaths think. And yes, I am not unaware of that, of power. But right now, in trying to gain their power, they're diluting the very basis and the wellspring of our power as a nation. And they want to say it's all about being Caucasoid, but it has nothing to do with that. It's thinking, the freedom of thinking, and it's the balance of the law, both in spirit and letter. Once again, I have to say, police reform. If you want police reform, we need two more senators. If you want, and a house that will take up. This is the most important vote this coming November. You want to undo gerrymandering so that way you actually have a voice, and it's not a bunch of old farts who are holding us back. You want things on climate change, you got to show up. Greetings, Now this is to Queen, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. I hope you are doing well. Um, it has been an odd week for me. As I said, it was a psychic attack, and you probably wouldn't. Doesn't matter. All that matters is results. But at the same time, I do must admit I was not. Well, I was wondering if Harry, with his statement of protecting the Queen, was thinking it was me that I'm trying to. Like, no, dude, I'm, I'm good with being me. I do not want to do this. Is about duty, as you have led. Um, so yes, I will be um, in profit within the end of next, not yet, the end of next week, and I will be attending. At least I'm working towards attending. Uh, Star Wars Celebration if I can. And I will keep my word because the thing is, ma'am, I do not need to be able to be the one who does it, the trading. It's just so I know that and that it's a matter of so that way I have my own capital, and that way it is known that yes, I will make a lot of money, but two, it is out of duty. If we can stop this world from going into a tailspin. Most people don't want to go to war. You can ask the people in Ukraine as they're being exterminated. Like Putin truly does not believe they deserve to exist. I understand duty to what must be done. To continue on. But I must admit, so and then the final one is about Kevin Samuels. That was a blow. That's a blow to the mind, to the structure, to the zeitgeist of where men in general are heading. We're like, we're not going to, you know, you worked your tail off, these things, and then to have your woman just talk down to you and crap all over you and all this, and you're trying to be respectful, and they took that respect as disrespect, and now we know how that was happening within the Black African American community, and there was somebody an avatar for young men to be able to aspire to you know work on themselves, work on um, there is something about knowing how to be fitted for a suit. There is something about knowing the proper way of doing things and why we do those things in these proper ways. And even if you and and having your own personal self-respect and setting boundaries as a man and being masculine and saying no, I do not wish to be treated this way. You will not speak to me in this way or the way that you are speaking to me, and I will, and especially you will not do so in my home. And if you want my protection and access to my hard work and resources, it is within general women. The first thing they do is they will devalue a situation. The more they allow it, the more they have to externally devalue it. So Kevin Samuels, he's going to be missed, and it's right when right when everything was about to pop off, that meme entity definitely attacked, and now people are starting to understand what is at stake. I'll be out of here. Today's the 9th. I'll be in profit by the 20th. Your Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, I will keep my word and keep my name. And I also will make sure that I'll do. The plan will work, ma'am, because of the people of the team that I put together, the type of people that I wish to place in my team. As an entrepreneur, my job is to create teams and to find the type of people that could execute. As you have seen with those of the quote family who want to tear down both England and the Commonwealth and America, which include some of these, like Rupert Murdoch and Lincoln Murdoch, the Trumps, all those who think that being part of the family is a destruction of Western civilization, as they. I know people like Trump, because he stated it, is watching. MBS is watching. I know Putin is probably watching. Xi, most likely. Connell. All of these very powerful persons forget. In America, we are the sovereigns. The individual grants power. McConnell has forgotten that part. He thinks he is power, and then he can, as long as he only has to worry about is manipulating Kentuckians, play on their bigotry, keep them nice and pissed off without them realizing he's picking their pockets. But they're gonna say, "Well, he's strong and powerful. I guess he's doing something for us." No, he ain't doing jack for you guys in Kentucky. Even the business owners who thinks they're getting slop. If there is not a network, then there is not capital to be made. And by being a single point of position, he is controlling everything within the network. By he, I mean Mitch McConnell. Therefore, it is not in his interest to keep everyone. He's more like a desert. Anyways, yes, Your Majesty, I will be the team. I'll be putting that team together, full team, and I will make sure that Meghan Markle and Harry will be on the balcony, if you would do so to choose it. Kevin Samuels, you'll be missed, brother. It's sad, man, because young men needed to know this. Whether you like him, hated him, liked him, or hated him. Man, Thank you much, brother. Thank you much, brother. Thank you for all you've done for all the men. See you on the other side, brother. See you on the other side.